Hey everybody, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. So I've been screwing around a little bit here when I've been digging my root cellar. I noticed there's a lot of clay in the soil. So I said, what the heck, let me see if I can actually purify the clay and make some form of primitive pottery with it. Those are the things I wanted to show you guys today because I was able to do it and I had some fun, and hopefully you can do the same thing. Okay, so the first thing you're gonna wanna look for when you're looking at soil, get a handful of your dirt and crush it in your hand. Almost all soil has some degree of clay in it. So as you're squeezing, you can see it holds together a little bit. But you'll see this has a really high amount of sand, gravel, and other sort of silt in here. So it really does not hold its shape. Usually down by rivers and creeks, you'll see lots of deposits of clay. This particular piece here I found when I was digging over in this area that was flooding after it rained, because that's another way you can tell if there's a lot of clay, because the clay is acting like a water barrier. As the sun begins to dry the soil, you'll see cracks from the clay as it's shrinking. These look like rocks that I pulled out, but when you crush them up, there are some rocks in there, but then there's also big chunks of clay. So this soil, in comparison to that first soil, has a much higher concentration of clay. Another thing that keeps coming out of the soil after all the rain is this stuff here, because it used to be a foundry in my neighbor's property. This is called iron oxide. So the thing that really excites me about this, outside of after it rains, it looks like there's jewels all over the ground, because there's purple, there's blue, there's green. These, I believe, if I crush them up, I can also use them in a glazing process for the pottery, because its chemical makeup is iron oxides and silicon dioxide, which are some components in pottery glazing that you can buy commercially. How cool would it be to be able to make pottery from my yard with native clay and this oxide? So this process is incredibly simple. You're only going to need a few items that you probably have kicking around your house already. You need 2 buckets, since we're going to be sifting the dirt back and forth in. An old towel or a cheap towel. I used a few t-shirts that I needed to get rid of, and it just was not thick enough. So trust me, you're gonna need a towel for this process. Some sort of string or rope. We're gonna have to let the clay drain, so we need to hang it from something. Water from a hose, clamps. I'll show you later, these will come in handy. Some kind of sieves that we'd use for food purpose, but this is a great way to collect the sand. You want to start off in small batches here. Fill up your bucket 1/3 of the way, and then fill it about 3/4 of the way with water. Believe me, I've tried doing larger batches, it's just too complicated. First step is you'll see all this organic matter, grass, weeds, branches, sticks that are all floating to the top. Scrape that off. The second step is you're going to get your hand down into the bottom, because a lot of the soil components have settled to the bottom. You're going to stir them back up again, but then fully dispersed in the water. At most, you're going to let this set for 5 seconds. What we're looking to do now is separate as much gravel, sand, and stone as we can. So now you have your second clean bucket. You lift this up, tremendous workout on the core, start pouring it in. You can actually see the clay suspended in the water already. But as we get to the bottom, you'll see all of that sediment. You're going to stop right there. And there you'll see big rocks, lots of sand, fine gravel, and there's not much clay in there, if much at all. A lot of the clay, because it's so light, clay is essentially microscopic pieces of sand. That's still suspended in the water, and that takes a while for that to settle. The next thing we're gonna do is rinse out this bucket completely clean, so you're starting fresh. Okay, next step, again, stir it up. You're gonna have your second bucket clean and with your coarser sieve first to collect any organic matter or gravel that you missed. Moving forward, it is essential that this is clean and all of your stuff gets washed in between each time. So right now we're trying to eliminate sand to give us the best quality clay that we can. So first pass to the sieve, you'll see a lot of wood chips, fine stone, roots, some organic matter that was down there. Discard that, and we get to do it all over again. Okay, second pass, you'll see, now we have some finer grain rocks in there. Still a little bit organic matter, but we're getting there. So now we've done 2 passes with the coarser grain sieve. Now we're moving on to this really fine metal strainer. It's called a chinois in the kitchen world, to catch any other finer particulate. So again, we're gonna stir this up and slowly pour into the chinois. So now you can start to see how much clearer the water is. After running it through the chinois, we're gonna do it one more time. All right, so now we're gonna clean this down to get it brand new and the bucket clean again and start fresh, all the time starting fresh, so we're eliminating as much sand as we can. Okay, now that we've ran it through the chinois 2 times, the only components that are left here should be sand and clay that's suspended in the water. And as you're twirling it around, you can kind of almost see this shimmer in the water. That's the clay, because it's much lighter than the sand. So now we're going to transfer this between bucket to bucket to bucket, cleaning down the buckets each time in between of all the sand that you'll see that's collecting on the side. Okay, right as you start to get to here, you'll see some of that sand in the water. So I like to rotate the bucket like this just so that I can kind of get that top layer of water. This is how much water I'm going to get rid of in the process. Okay, so now I'm going to clean all this down, do the same process back and forth until I'm happy with the amount of sand that's left, which should be little to none if I can help it. So your next step you're going to want to do is you get your towel, fold it over so it's a couple layers. And this is where these clips come in handy that I was talking about. Put on the four corners, because what's going to want to happen as you're pouring the liquid in is your towel, because the weight is going to want to go right to the bottom of the bucket, and then you're just going to have the whole thing collapse and mix with itself, and it's going to be a bummer. If you don't have clips like this, you can easily tie rope around the sides. So now you have this lined. You want to stir up your water again to make sure all the clay particles are detached from the bottom of the bucket, and now we're going to pour it right in. You may find, since it's so thick, that you'd have to pour a few times to let the water separate from the towels, which we're gonna have to do in this case. All right, so it's been about 4 hours since we've strained the clay through this towel here. And as you can see, if you look at it, the cracks are developing, just like I was talking about earlier when you're trying to identify it in the soil. At this point, you can undo your fasteners and string it up with a rope and let it hang overnight, or you can just squeeze and wring the rest of the water out of it if you're impatient. I decided to let my clay hang dry overnight. The following morning, I took it out and kneaded it like fresh dough to get as much air as I could out of it. Afterwards, I put it into a plastic bag and kept it in a dark, cool place until I was going to use it. My future intention is to pit fire the pottery by cooking it in live fire, so stay tuned for that. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and if you did, give it a shot. Have some fun.